What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious along with Jeff the Total Package, Craig the British Bulldog, and Uncle Cuz, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, the legacy of WCW Saturday Night. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. Jess, what are we doing? Huh? What?
This is going to be a follow-up episode to our legacy of primetime wrestling, which will be coming out shortly if it hasn't already.
Whee!
And so I'm just gonna. Sometimes I get selfish when I write topics, and I just write about my nostalgia from my younger childhood. And so we're all fond of Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge, and we're all fond of primetime wrestling because before Raw there was primetime wrestling. However, the WCW side or NWA side, TBS has been hosting pro wrestling when the dinosaurs were walking the earth. That's how long they've been hosting pro wrestling. And it changed. It was a lot of different stuff. And then when Turner bought WCW in 1988, about, I don't know, let's see, when did we do this? 92 is when it changed. So about 3 or 4 years later, they took that time slot, the 6:05 or 3:05, depending on what coast you're on. They had a program that would come on every single Saturday night. And WCW in 1992 tried to revamp their program. They wanted to kind of make it fresh or whatever. And they came up with WCW Saturday Night. And that started in 1992. They changed the graphic. It was like the WCW symbol with the Saturday Night cursive in black. They tried to copy Saturday Night Live. They did like a trumpet, not a trumpet beginning, but the beginning of SNL is like a jovial kind of like tune. And I'm gonna open the episode with the WCW Saturday Night one, and it was like a WCW Saturday Night kind of like trumpets and showed the outside of the CNN towers and all that stuff, or not Trump towers, the Turner, broadcasting network and all that stuff, and it showed the outside of that. It was like a city shot, and then they went in, and it was on a recording studio, which a lot of pro wrestling was before that, so this wasn't new. But WCW Saturday Night launched in 1992, as Dave's going to get to, and I remember religiously just as much as WWF Superstars of Wrestling on Saturday morning. I remember watching Saturday Night Wrestling or Saturday Evening Wrestling. I would come in, especially in the summers. It's like, you remember like the smell of the air and the crispness of the air or whatever when you were kids. I remember coming in half dry from the pool, in the summer, drying off or whatever, and coming in and watching WCW Saturday Night. And obviously it ran throughout the whole year, not just summer. But I remember these nostalgic like sensibilities when I was a kid, and like just watching WCW in the early 90s on WCW Saturday Night. Like I remember when they changed and they tried this new format, and WCW Saturday Night lasted all the way until like 90. God.
I'll jump right in. WCW Saturday Night was an American weekly Saturday night television show on TBS that was produced by World Championship Wrestling. Launched in 1971 initially by Georgia Championship Wrestling, the program existed through various incarnations through different names before becoming WCW Saturday Night in 1992. Though initially the anchor show of the Turner Broadcasting-backed wrestling company, the September 1995 premiere of WCW Monday Nitro airing on the sister station of TNT, usurped the show's once preeminent position in the company as the primary source of storyline development and pay-per-view buildup.
And my long-winded rant in the beginning or whatever, like before Raw, all your storylines developed on Superstars and sometimes Wrestling Challenge, but mainly it was Superstars Wrestling. In WCW, it was before Saturday Night. It was the TBS show on Saturday. And then when WCW Saturday Night started, it was still WCW Saturday Night was the main. That's what you watch for the main storylines to start. If new feuds kicked off, you had to watch WCW Saturday Night every Saturday. This is before Nitro, because Nitro, like Dave mentioned, Nitro aired in '95 and then took the place of it. But WCW Saturday Night was the mainstay of the
Yeah.
main feuds in WCW.
Raw promoted obviously Nitro to come into play because Eric went to went to the owner and said, "Hey, I want to go up against WWF," and he said, "Okay." He never thought he'd get it, but he had to ask, and he got it. It changed everything. But before then, we had Saturday Night rolling into it in '92. So this reflected an overhauled look and a new home studio arena at the Center Stage Theater in Atlanta, with some footage of matches in Columbus, Georgia. The show was presented in a neon style with blue and pink color schemes. Neon signs displayed the show's logo, and the wrestlers entered through a silver mylar curtain.
So stupid. I'm not saying it was good. So I went back when I wrote this episode. I went back and watched a lot of the thing. So poor Jim Ross was in the studio with maybe 100 fans. And you know how WWF does or WWE does the Hall of Fame now, where it's a wrestling ring, but they take the front ropes off.
Yeah.
So the camera, that's what WCW Saturday Night was in the beginning. And he would have guests on there. Like he'd have Ventura. He would have Donald Fry on there. He would have NASCAR drivers on there, whatever. And they would sit and bore this 100 people in the crowd. And then he'd be and then they would go to pre-tape matches from, like Dave said, from Georgia. So it's they didn't even do it live until Bischoff took over. So they would come in, and it's what Primetime Wrestling tried on our Legacy of Primetime Wrestling. The last year that it was around, before they went to the roundtable discussion thing, it was a live studio that Vince would make his employees fucking stay afterwards. You're sitting in the fucking audience. And so it was, they both did it right around this time. I don't know who copied who, but it was so weird. And I would go back and watch it, and they were really good matches. The theme of the original WCW Saturday Night, by the way, was the main event would always be 2 out of 3 falls.
And from the studios of World Championship Wrestling, this is WCW Saturday Night. And here's your host, Jim Ross.
Up to you, Big Jim Ross.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to a very special edition. This is WCW Saturday Night, and we're happy you're a part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see Flying Brian defend the light heavyweight championship of the world on this broadcast. Also, we'll be taking a look at the United States heavyweight champion, Ravishing Rick Rude. We'll have tag team competition as the team of Cactus Jack and Diamond Dallas Page will be challenged by the fabulous Freebirds. Plus, we've got a very special 2 out of 3 fall main event, some in-depth interviews, and a lot of fun for you. But right now, I'd like to introduce the man that will be my guest co-host this week on our first edition of WCW Saturday Night. Please welcome Jesse the Body Ventura.
And that lasted for probably 3 months. It was just WCW trying shit. So I remember specifically Jim Ross sitting there with the rings, the ring ropes removed, going, "My God, we have Jesse Ventura here." And they would do that. Let's go to our first match. And they would go to a fucking pre-tape match. So that means the studio audience they were there legitly just to watch the taping of Jim Ross and his guests. Not live wrestling, but the taping. It's fucking weird. It was so weird.
Well, don't forget, in '94, a futuristic design with a unique entryway of slide open doors and billowing smoke as the performers.
That was the Bischoff era.
Ring.
So in 93, 94, that's when he did the yellow WCW helicopter logo.
Yeah.
And then he made it spin. Remember, it spun, the ring spun on the stage.
So stupid.
Bischoff refined it. He took WCW off the road. No more house shows. He's like, we're going to work all on our TV production. And like Dave said, remember the beginning of the arm, the robotic arm? It's like, warning, warning, overload.
I actually remember that.
Yeah, it's that's the classic, the WCW Saturday Night Remember. So after the whole copy of SNL, they tried to do, then when Bischoff took over, he made it. So remember the doors that slid open? Fog would pour out of the doors like dry ice, and then would open up. That was the Bischoff era. So he wanted this.
At least he
actually wrestled. He wrestled in the studio. So that tiny audience actually had a ring in it, and so they didn't do they kept all 4 ring ropes on the ring, and they wrestled right in front of that studio crowd. So Bischoff went back to studio wrestling, which wasn't new at the time. He just said, "We're losing so much money going on house shows. We're going into a 5,000 seat venue for a house show, and we're getting 500 fans. We're dying. We're losing
It's not
tons of
worth
fucking
it.
money." Yeah, so he's like, "No more." So for a full year, Bischoff's like, "We're going to work on our TV production," and he revamped Saturday Night WCW Saturday Night to be like what we know as the robotic beginning and the doors opening or whatever and all that stuff, which I kind of remember that the most, but like I do remember the original Saturday Night. So I remember just watching the warning, warning on the beginning and
Engage cybernetic generation sequence. Malfunction detected. System overload. Warning. 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 System overload critical. Warning. Warning. Warning.
So the NW, and you might have already talked this a few minutes ago, but the early like Center Stage Atlanta, was that considered Saturday night, or was that NWA?
no, it was
Well,
NWA.
it was-
Yeah, it was the same time
It was
slot.
the same slot. Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
before WCW.
And then in '92, when finally in '92, I think when Fry it was before, it was after they fired Hurd and Fry took over, and that's when Fry's like, let's call it. They copied SNL, like Saturday Night Live. The Saturday was cursive or whatever.
Yeah.
They did WCW Saturday Night in blue cursive, and then they had like the shots of the city, like SNL's the shots of New York and all that. It's the shots of CNN Center. It's the shots of whatever. They tried to copy the beginning of SNL, and it was a weird generic like rip off of SNL's like theme music, and that was the original WCW Saturday Night with Jim Ross in a fucking studio with 400 people that didn't see live wrestling.
Yeah.
They're just listening to Jim Ross going, "So, Don Allen Fry, what do you think?" "I think WCW is going forward.
Oh my
The
god.
future." Yeah, it was terrible.
It's terrible.
But they'd have NASCAR drivers because TNT and TBS were NASCAR, and they'd have baseball players there because they were baseball, obviously the Braves and all that stuff. So yeah, but like Dave said, they
Turner on
moved.
all of that.
Bischoff's like, "Fuck that shit. I just
Yeah.
want to make a nice production thing." And he did the whole,
Turner was really trying to cross brand like crazy.
Right.
in
Yeah,
those
oh
days.
yeah. which is
It
not
doesn't always
which
work.
is not dumb, by the way.
It's not a bad idea.
You do
just I don't
that,
think it
right?
worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the show originally premiered, it was hosted by Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura.
Oh,
Bruno
wow.
San Martino also appeared sporadically as a guest color
400
commentator
pounds.
during certain weeks of '92.
How
No
boring
thanks.
was San
Not
Martino?
much-
Nah,
Not
let me
much color
tell you,
there, I'll tell you that much.
this action in WCW, wowie bowie.
So there's a helicopter going to come in or no here? So no.
Is this like Saturday Night Live? We do sketches.
Why is the ring
No.
turning? It with this RoboCop. Where is RoboCop?
Oh man. Tony Schiavone took over the hosting duties following Ross's departure from
My
the
God.
WWF in 1993 and remained there until '98.
I'll
Forget that
step
Ross
in.
was
I'm
there.
Gordon Soley, and I'll step in.
Oh God.
Yeah. Bobby Heenan would replace Ventura after joining WCW in the beginning of 1994. Dusty Rhodes, who affectionately referred to Saturday Night as the Mothership,
Oh, the
replaced him in
mothership.
1995 and continued until January of '98. Rhodes and Schiavone were removed from the broadcast so Schiavone could focus on his other broadcasting duties, and Rhodes could take a managerial role after having turned heel, joining the New World Order.
That's my
It's
throw it down the drain,
it's
kid.
kind of It's interesting when you see who's coming in there. When you see Bobby coming in, I think that's where like Bischoff was trying to make some of his big moves because he paid Bobby a ton of money to come over, and Bobby was like reluctant to go. I think he didn't want to ever leave WWF, but he offered him enough to come this way, and he was there for a long time. It was it was kind of like the start of
And Gene Okerlund, and then once they started Nitro, it all
And Gene.
changed. But yeah, like it was the focus point was WCW Saturday Night for many years.
Yeah, 100%. Those were replaced by Scott Hudson and Mike Tenay. We love Mike Tenay.
Oh yeah.
Who was later replaced with Larry Zabitsko. Gene Okerlund often handled interviews after he joined WCW in '93, as did Tenay, Schiavone, and Lee Marshall. In the summer of '96, WCW Saturday Night was taped at WCW's Pro Disney's MGM studios set in Orlando, Florida, due to all of Turner's mobile production units being used by other broadcasters for the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. I didn't realize that's what sparked them to come over there, and they stayed there for quite a bit.
Yeah.
Tony
Schiavone and Dusty Rhodes, and welcome to WCW Saturday Night. 1 week away now from Slim Jim's Halloween Havoc. The worst thing that could possibly happen has happened to the Macho Man Randy Savage. He walks out. He's upset from comments made by Miss Elizabeth. Very sincere comments, I would think.
Well, I tell you what, Tony, it was an emotional roller coaster ride for the Macho Man Randy Savage. I thought it had all been behind him after the scene in the hallway of the hotel. But on this past Monday Nitro, Macho Man Randy Savage was face to face with what I believe is reality. Whether he will be ready for Halloween Havoc, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It does make sense. By the way, just a weird thing about the Atlanta Olympics. Do you remember like the fake bomb scare and a lot? Or actually, I think it was a real bomb, but they accused the guy who said he found it of actually creating it.
The security guard. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it ever was him, but they tried to accuse him.
No, there's that Eastwood movie that goes into that talks about the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy times for.
But
he would have learned a lesson.
The thing, like, those shows are tough, man. Like the Disney and MGM studios and whatever, they're not real fans. They're just people that you corral, just like we used to do in high school for TV tapings. Yep. You're filled with people that don't want to be there. They're just paid to be there, or tourists. You got caught.
They want to get out of the heat in Florida.
It's tough.
Disney World.
It's really tough. And especially if you're going to watch prelims.
Do you have air conditioning? Air conditioning? Yeah, I'll come in for one.
Who's that guy?
Yeah.
Bischoff is constantly saying these, like, dude, I love Disney because it was so much cheaper, or I love the sound studios, but he's like, we would just get fucking winos wanting an AC.
Yeah.
Like, coming there.
That's what he said.
To fill a seat.
Yeah. When WCW introduced the live program Monday Nitro on TNT in September of 95, the pre-taped Saturday night became secondary in importance. When Thunder premiered January of 98, then it became tertiary. And that's a word for it. The majority of airtime would be used to display up-and-comers and recent graduates of the WCW power plant, with the occasional squash match, as well as recapping the major events.
And what a lot of, again, to wrestling fans, I know Cuz likes stuff like this because he liked Velocity and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get to
did.
the masses, it's not going to work. But when they became the third tier, like, I remember Jimmy Hart was kind of responsible for writing most of it. And so they would just have a lot of power plant people, or they would take people that weren't working on the main roster and bring them down. And I love that stuff. I love the original WCW Saturday Night, but once Nitro took over, you clearly knew Nitro was the driving force. Nitro was the number one show. And then especially in 98, when Thunder took over, you're like, oh God, WCW Saturday Night, why are they even still doing it? And I thought the same thing about Superstars of Wrestling, because Superstars of Wrestling stopped in 97, 98. Because after a while, I'm like, why even doing Superstars anymore? It makes no sense. Like, why do syndicated TV when you have Raw? But WCW Saturday Night got real fun kind of towards the end, if you like that stuff, because I always loved primetime wrestling, and I loved the old school
transformation, though.
No, it is. It was a fall from grace for sure, as far as like the importance of what it meant to wrestling fans and storylines. But the hardcore fans would always look at that going, I could watch two prelims, if you want to call them that. I don't mean that to be disrespectful.
They're up and comers. Yeah.
I used to love Iron Mike Sharp against Jim Powers for fucking 15 minutes. I loved it. Like, I loved Barry Horowitz against Paul Roma, and like I love that shit. Like, because I that's why I love primetime wrestling, even back in the late 80s, early 90s. I love that stuff because I'm a wrestling fan. I love watching them work.
I think Craig kind of gets with this too, but I'm really big on branding, and I always thought that was like the coolest name, the Power Plant, where all the up and comer guys are coming from, is the Power Plant. I don't know why, but I always thought that
WCW was the first
super cool.
goddamn performance center. Not really, like
NXT.
Performance center, but yeah, it was WXT. I don't know what that means.
Whoa.
What was the documentary, or where did we see the guys with the mullet thought they were gonna, and then they just threw up and quit immediately? What was that?
It was.
They were
it
power
wasn't a
plant
documentary. It was like a special, I think, on like
On the power plant?
2020 or whatever, like something like that. They did
Okay.
a big thing on Power Plant. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fattest, most disgusting Southerners, like with the mullets, that wanted to, just couldn't survive the first 2 hours of the power plant.
It's like all the fans.
In other
trying
words,
out for the
WCW
Eagles.
was the first. I mean, Vince always used like USWA and Smoky Mountain Wrestling and ECW as like his
Then
like
OVW.
kind of like picking points or whatever. But OVW was later.
Yeah.
But I mean, like WCW, even back here, they developed a power plant, like a training center. That was kind of revolutionary. I don't think WCW power plant gets a lot of props for what it started. Like, I mean, after a while, when they finally had enough money to do the performance center, it was all based off WCW power plant. It was WCW,
legit.
yeah. Even though it was not even close to
Um,
the facility that performance center is, but I mean, like WCW power
I'm-
plant was the first
It's
like
pretty similar.
training
I'm
station.
reading-
Like,
I'm reading
That's all
ahead, and
high
I'm
tech.
gonna start laughing. So we probably need to keep going because I'm reading.
Yeah,
the
go ahead, go
possible names. We gotta keep going. On April 1st of 2000, WCW Saturday Night aired its final episode under its traditional format. 1 week later, it became a recap show and no longer featured exclusive matches. On July 1st of 2000, the show was retitled WCW Saturday Morning and was moved from its established evening time slot to a late morning time slot. And they got coffee tables and hosts. No, I'm just kidding.
And
The
two
show was
ferns.
canceled, two ferns, and was canceled 1 month later as a result of low viewership. Yeah, you
Yeah,
moved
no
the next
shit. Really?
morning.
That's weird.
yeah.
Like, what happened? I don't know what happened. The last episode aired August 19th of
Going up
2000,
against some
7
Saturday
months
morning cartoons,
before
brother.
WCW was bought out by the WWF and closed its doors entirely. The cancellation of WCW
Bye-bye.
Saturday Night on a Turner-owned network would be the end of professional wrestling and its Saturday night time slot on TBS until the premiere of AEW Collision on its sister channel of TNT on July 17th, 2023. That just happened 23 years later, almost a full 23 years later. After the World Wrestling Federation acquired the assets of WCW in 2001, the WWF had attempted to revive Saturday night time slot used by WCW Saturday Night on TNN, renamed to Spike TV, now known as Paramount Network, that allowed to continue running WCW as a separate entity. Here's the proposed show names. Are you guys ready for these? There's some funny ones in here. Okay, WCW Saturday Nitro. Okay, Night Nitro. I don't know why it's Night Nitro.
Wait, these are alternate names for a Saturday night?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. WCW Saturday Night
No,
Nitro.
it's when after Vince bought them, and
After
Vince was going to do a
Vince, yeah.
Saturday night show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the best one. He's like, I can just see him going, ha! WCW Hot Box.
WCW
I
doesn't
already know what a
be
hot
on them.
box is.
He doesn't
he doesn't know what a hot box
is.
He thinks it's a
We're gonna call
sauna.
it the Hot Box.
It's not a
You're
sauna,
like,
right? You sit in a hot box? No.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
fucking-
It's a sauna.
You know, like Trips and Michaels is over like, really, bro? Like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
WCW Uprising. I can get with that one. Here's the
Oh, this one's
WCW
fucking stupid, Dave. Don't even say this out loud.
Appetite.
Late night appetite. What the fuck are we doing?
We'll get Bastion Booger back
This
to that one.
No way the next one's real. No way. The next one can't be real. WCW Hard on Saturday night.
That's fine.
Hard?
Oh, the next one's very sexual too. Read the next one.
WCW. I tried
Primal
to answer it this way. So Primal Urge. WCW
that's all
Primal
Vince.
Urge. All Vince. He's just like,
Oh,
What
WCW
do we
Genetic
call it?
Jackhammer.
Yeah.
What?
he's terrible. He's terrible. These plans obviously fell through when no TV station would touch the WCW
Really?
Because of its reputation for losing money.
Are you sure it's
And
the
the time
reputation of
slot-
losing money or the fucking names?
Yeah, the time slot that was intended for WCW reboot later became WWF XS, and then WWE Velocity, and then WWE.
Of course, he's going to never give fucking any credit to WCW.
Nah. The WWF went on to carry out a brand extension, running two separate
Oh, that's
entities
weird.
named after one of the WWF's two existing televised shows, Raw and SmackDown instead, because they were already doing that. So we're
They
like,
sound like
"Let's
WCW.
stay
That's
with
why. Told you.
it." Yeah.
WCW Saturday Night had so many good shows. I love going back on the network or Peacock and
Boo.
watching like them. There was a lot of really cool stuff they did on WCW Saturday Night. I loved it. I really loved that, especially like the 92 to 94 area was like really good shit. Like Terror Rising, Triple H was a lot on WCW Saturday Night in 94 before he went to WWF. And there's a lot of really cool. How many clips do you see of Adam Copeland? Edge was a prelim on
Yep.
WCW Saturday Night. Didn't he fight Terror Rising or
RVD,
was it
he
somebody
fought-
else? Ro-
Yeah, I think it was him. And then RVD was also on-
RVD, Cuz said RVD, the Road Dog,
Road
like was
Dogg,
on
yep.
there a lot too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
dude, like There was so many, like, they were all prelim workers, or enhancement talent. There's so many cool shit on WCW Saturday Night. Sting and Flair fought for the world title,
Yeah.
like, on there.
They always
Steamboat
had good
Flair
main
fought for the world
events.
title.
Like
Yes,
the last
yeah.
match was always really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch something.
Tex Slazenger and Shanghai Pierce were fucking staples, like, of WCW Saturday
Dude,
Night.
Bobby
And they
Eaton
were
was always
good.
showcased on Saturday Night. Bobby Eaton.
Yeah,
He
fucking
must live
Too
right
Cold
around
and
the corner.
Bagwell. Too Cold and Bagwell
Right.
won tag titles on WCW Saturday Night, and like it's crazy, man. There was all
Eric
kinds of
Mills.
good shit.
The Vader Cactus Jack powerbomb wasn't that Saturday Night?
Yeah, that was. I think that was
Whoa.
Saturday Night. If not, it was something else. But they had their feud developed for sure on Saturday Night, no question.
That's the concrete, Tony. Race has removed the mat.
If he power bombs him here, Chesley, he'll kill him. Whoa!
He power bombed him on the cement, Tony.
He's not moving.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff, man. There was really fun stuff like in WCW Saturday Night. I miss it. Like I miss stuff like that too because I just remember, and it's all nostalgia, right? I remember again as a kid coming in, just going, "Oh shit, it's 6:05," right? Like, and I would go and watch it and just really have a good time. And I miss WWF stuff. That WCW Superstars of Wrestling, Wrestling Challenge was my jam as well. And later I'd watch Primetime Wrestling before it was Raw. But before Raw and before Nitro, there was Primetime Wrestling and WCW Saturday Night. I'll never forget them. Like they were the driving forces. Syndicated television. Well, TBS wasn't really syndicated, but like, Vince was doing the syndicated stuff. And it's like, I'll never forget like all that stuff, that special time coming in and watching that stuff. It's really cool.
It's funny for those of you that have kids, when Jess says something like, I walk in the house, I'm like, wait a minute, is it almost 6:05? And you knew what was on. It was WCW Saturday Night. My kid's like, what do you mean? Why was it 6:05? I'm like, because shows didn't come on whenever you wanted them to. They came on when they came on, and you had to be there. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And
Like
6:05 was different,
under-
right? It wasn't 6 p.m. It was 6:05.
Yeah,
like
TBS
on for a
and
reason.
TNT
like,
always did it for 5 minutes.
and it was an
after, yeah.
advertising point. No other, Seinfeld was on at 8 or whatever at what time it was, or it wasn't 8:05. It was just for some reason TBS had that great again, like just
They knew you would show up at 8 to watch commercials. That's why, or 6 or whatever it was. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it with TBS and stuff was in WGN, it was kind of led by baseball. So it was like TBS was led by Braves games, and then WGN was led by Cubs games.
They always start at the 5 or 10 minute mark.
Yeah.
Baseball games always do, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
So they kind of followed that nostalgia with the Atlanta Braves. Ted's I don't know if that was his first love, but wrestling was certainly like second or third. But yeah, he liked his wrestling and his car racing. And
his wrestling kept the Superstation alive while he figured out what he wanted it to be. So in the periods where you would collapse as a network, wrestling kept it up. And
Saturday Night was a big part of that.
Ted always
Saturday Night was a
knew.
huge
Ted
part of
always
that.
had that in his heart. He's like, dude, this wrestling thing saved my life. Like, it kept my shit afloat. Until
It's going to be shitty sitcoms or shitty old movies, and then live. It's something new or live that was cheap. Was the way to go?
Some wrestling, as we heard.
They Clash of the Champions. They did everything.
Well, Ted,
Why is
I'm
it
in the
like
wrestling
wrestling?
business.
Excuse
Oh no,
me,
I'm in
Ted.
the
sorry you
entertainment
said-
business. What
I'm
did
in the
what did he
wrestling
say?
business, brother?
Excuse me, Ted. I'm smarter than you, and I have to say,
Ted called him and said, "Hey, Vince, I'm in the wrestling business," and then Vince said, "I'm in the entertainment business."
"Oh, Ted, that's unfortunate."
Actually, Vince said wrestling. He said, I'm in the wrestling business. Because he said wrestling, so that was his way to, I'm smarter than you. I said wrestling.
Vince, I mean, that's a whole other tangent, but Vince really took accents as a sign of not intellectual at all. And I'm like, that was a big mistake for a lot of reasons. But that's a whole other tangent.
You don't talk like me. You're stupid.
I'm gonna make you wear a cowboy hat. Yeah, all that stuff. For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? For the Uncle Cuz and the rest, this is the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one,
Brother.